Representative Crowder, Representative Ishka, Representative Taylor without the T, Taylor, Representative Wilson, Representative Shins, Representative Sway, Representative Jendick, Representative Connor, Representative Kwok. Okay, and notice it was A, B, C, D, E. Okay, so a line marks A, B, C, D, E. So you start out with the purple green says then you say the bill is not moving forward. The sponsors of the bill made the arguments, and you're going to read everybody's names. You can say Representative Klein, or just say Representatives Crowder, Michka, Tabor, please sign the okay? They'll talk, and when Crowder goes, you can say thank you, Representative Michka. You can always say you have the floor. That's good. You can just say the name. Once you recognize the last person, anytime you talk, you hit this microphone. And then you hit the button. You can move this microphone. So then you go to the line, you read the line, and then you recognize the last person. And then you go to C, D, and E. Representatives Connor, Representative Connor, After that, there's this pause. This person stops talking. Sometimes that person forgets to wait, and then there's a react this button. Without objection, if this button the bill is now on third reading. All those in favor of passing stand. They're going to count, they're going to tell the clerk, and the clerk should nod and let you know that he has the numbers. If not, you can say, good, and let you know, thank you, you may be seated. All those opposed, stand. Wait, thank you, you may be seated. Are there any abstentions? Stand. If they're heard and they get them down, then you can say, thank you, you may be seated. The clerk will get the numbers. Okay, we are looking for
so, you guys coming back?
yes. So say the vote. All you're doing asking is it 26? If it is, it passes. If it's less, it doesn't. Okay? Then if it is, you say the bill is sufficient number of votes to pass. The bill is insufficient number of votes. It should not pass. Okay? If you are gavel,
How do you expect everything that we actually are live?
That's way too early.
I troubleshooted so that in case.
How would you troubleshoot?
She doesn't. That's fine.
Yeah, you know, it's like I figured I would rather start it early. Start it late. I'd rather start it early. Tricks is
People figure it out.
Exactly. I love sitting down. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Alright, several other things. When you wrap it up, 10 because
to the clerk as a head teller, so I don't know where I stand.
Probably here.
Here. And then I think I just texted you because a parent, you said that maybe you would know, a parent was attempting to follow the link from Facebook to YouTube to watch her daughter.
Yeah.
And she said that she couldn't get in. It said that it's private or restricted. And then we thought that it was because we had recessed for lunch.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I can.
Yep. Yeah, because if you log in, it should be live now. So actually, if you want to go test it by going to Lee's Facebook page,
Is it what?
SSI Facebook.
7 is exchange. You're gonna get to see
Did I do it wrong? SSIFacebook.com?
Yeah, SSI at Facebook.com or Student Statesmanship Institute at Facebook.com. Facebook.
At Facebook
Or just type Facebook.
I'm just gonna put my stuff here for right now.
Oh, Facebook, so I don't know.
I'll test it as someone who has it.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
Okay.
First round, counting votes now. Like I can.
attention. Members, guests in the gallery, thank you for joining us today. I am Joseph Cecil, the president of SSI, which runs the lead summer program here. It's a privilege to have you join us today in the House Chamber. For those of you who weren't here this morning, I want to just recognize the providence of God briefly. Last night, the state legislature was deep into budget negotiations. We had been told that if they adjourned by midnight on Thursday, we would be able to use the chamber. They went till 4 a.m. Last night, they reached out and said, you know what, no matter how late we go, as long as we're out of here before you need to be in here, we will let you use the chamber. And what a great privilege it is to be here today. So let's give a round of applause for the gentlemen in the red jackets are our house sergeants. First of all, please respect them. Anything they say is law in this room. But in addition to that, they all worked very late last night and came in again this morning for us anyway, so we should show our appreciation and our respect to them for that. A couple quick notes to our representatives, guys. Remember, name tags off in your seats. Be ready. Yeah, go ahead and take your name tags off at the side. And to our guests in the gallery too, remember that this is not a performance, right? This isn't a play that you memorize the lines to. It isn't a reenactment. This is you showing off a week of hard work. These are real bills that affect real people and hopefully resolve real problems, and that's what the debate today is going to show. Remember, bathrooms are in the back. We will take a brief recess later on. Please, members and guests in the gallery, make sure to silence your cell phones. There's to be no leaning on the railing above. If you lean on the railing or make too much noise up there, friends, we'll have to let you know and remind you of the rules. Please be respectful of that. Members, you will be addressing the speaker, the person in the rostrum here, as Mr. or Madam Speaker, as that may be fit. If you give the wrong title to that person, it feels cheap to give this morning, but if you call me Madam Speaker, I will gavel you down. Okay? I will enjoy it as well. Okay? Remember, Infinity Gauntlet level power right here. Okay? If you need to adjust the microphone, and please do adjust the microphone, okay? If you want that microphone up close to your mouth, adjust it by tilting the podium. Please take just 2 seconds before you begin to speak and check the distance of that microphone to your mouth. We want to hear you loud and clear. With that, I believe we're ready to begin. The House will come to order. Members, please take note. Rule 32 is now in effect. Remain at your desks. The clerk will give the roll.
Mr. Speaker, there are 51 members present.
Members and guests in the gallery, please rise as the Honorable Jeff Janowick leads us in prayer, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance immediately after.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much that we can gather together in a free country, in a free state, where we can take part in a legislative process, that we can see exactly how our government works and the work that goes into that as well. Thank you for all of the students that came here today and the families that sacrificed for them to be able to come as well. Heavenly Father, this is a wonderful organization that you have blessed over 30 years. Thank you for all the leadership in SSI and the LEAD program. Please bless this program. Make it thrive, Lord, in a culture that desperately needs you, Lord Jesus Christ, and your holiness. Let us be a shining light by sharing the gospel message of the Lord Jesus Christ with others. Thank you, Father, for allowing us to be in this chamber. This is a very special opportunity, Lord, that you have provided for us, and we're thankful for that. Bless our time as we're together now, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. In case you didn't notice, yes, we do emphasize a couple words in the pledge a little bit more, just to make up for the rest of the country that might not at times. One quick note I do want to make to our guests in the gallery. If you are here watching a young person that you know and love and you're familiar with their convictions, if you hear them saying something that doesn't quite sound right, bear with us. In the simulation this week, they have been assigned to the positions in their bill. They have been assigned to oppose one bill and support another. Everything else, they'll vote their conscience, or just recognize the merit of the arguments, the quality of the arguments presented by another committee. But if you hear them saying something, advocating that perhaps we shouldn't cut taxpayer dollars from a certain program, and you think, I taught them better than that, you certainly did. But they are fulfilling their role within that simulation. And anything else, though, if they vote away you don't like, feel free to follow up with them. Other than that, it is a privilege again to have you all here. I remind you once again, this is the result of their hard work and their diligence, not a performance. With that, all right. Is there a motion on the floor?
Mr. Speaker, I move that we take up item 1 on the calendar. House Bill House Bill 6183.
The clerk will read.
House Bill number 6183, a bill to amend 1954 PA 116, entitled Michigan Election Law. The people of the state of Michigan enact.
The bill is now open for debate. The sponsors of the bill may present opening arguments. Representatives James Crowder, Jordan Michka, Jonathan Tabor. Find the microphone.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am here to talk about the injustice happening in this country to our youth. Bill 6183 will defend our youth and make it possible for 16-year-olds to vote, as they are trusted with the responsibility of their and other people's lives beyond the wheel daily. By lowering the age to vote has been proven successful in other states such as Maryland. 2 cities in Maryland have lowered the age to vote and has been proven successful. It also can help mature generations. I personally, a 14-year-old, I work one job and I'm starting a second. A good part of my money is going to the state, but I have no say in what happens with it. I'm being taxed without representation. Being 14 does not mean I will be able to vote yet. However, it will be closer to representation. This bill will make a difference for my generation and future ones. As James Otis once said, taxation without representation is tyranny. Tyranny means cruel and oppressive government rule. We want to promote political involvement and taxing with proper representation. Thank you for your time.
Representative Michka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand here today in support of House Bill 6183. Adults work. Adults also pay taxes. And because they pay taxes, they're given representation, or in other words, the right to vote. Similarly, many 16 and 17-year-olds also work and pay taxes. And while many do know what these taxes are used for, some don't. Regardless, these hardworking teens are not even given the choice to vote. However, by lowering the voting age to 16, we give the vast majority of working teens taxation with representation. In addition, lowering the voting age would provide early experience in voting, which would in turn give teens a better understanding of how voting works in our nation. After all, the decisions determined by these votes affect the future of these teens just as much as it does adults, if not more. Also, high schoolers were required to take a government class by graduation starting in 2016. This could lead to teens knowing more about the structure of our government than their parents. Finally, this bill has been successful in several towns of Maryland, along with many other countries. And so far, the voting turnout for 16 and 17-year-olds has been 4 times the amount of adults. Teens have shown responsibility with voting in other states and therefore should be able to do so here. Remember to vote yes on House Bill 6183. Thank you.
Representative Tyler.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We should lower the voting age because teens have many adult responsibilities, like driving and paying taxes. 16-year-olds can also work a full-time job and get married, so it's perplexing that they aren't given the right to vote because they have important adult responsibilities. Driving is much more dangerous than simply safely voting. Thus, we should give teens the right to vote because they already have other, more dangerous responsibilities like driving. They're taxed without representation. Teens are more educated than adults are about government. Their futures are more affected by voting in bills than adults' futures are. And teens' ability to vote well can be seen in other states and countries that have passed this bill already. And so I urge you, my fellow representatives, to pass this essential bill into law. Vote yes. Vote yes for bill number 6183. Thank you.
The opposing caucus may now present the opposing arguments. Representatives Ayler, Wilson, Schindel, and Sway. Representative Ayler.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Although the principal idea of Bill 6183 advocating for lowering the voting age at the state level has positive intentions, overall this bill will have negative repercussions on the ultimate process of electing our state and local leaders. 16 and 17-year-olds are not responsible enough or experienced enough to be allowed to affect such federal leadership. Lack of clarity between examples used by the supporting side and parameters set in the bill, representation or lack thereof of teens in the workforce, and the misunderstanding of the divine rights of people are all reasons why it is absolutely vital for you to vote nay on House Bill 6183. To start off, several arguments have been made that the many granted rights of a 16-year-old prove that they are plenty able to and deserving of the privilege to vote. The issue with this statement is that the given rights mentioned include driving, getting married, and working with no restrictions. Each and every one of the rights mentioned can, with the exception of extreme circumstances, be taken away by the parents of the 16 or 17-year-old. This poses the question as to whether parents would have to approve the teen's right to vote before it becomes a real option to the teen. This also creates the idea that parents would be able to pressure or even force their children into voting a certain way, whether or not they must sign off on the right first. Another reason why lowering the voting age should not even be a question is because, as stated by CNBC News, only 35% of teens ages 16 to 19 are a part of the workforce. This means that the argument of taxation without representation is negated in the vast majority of that age group. With this argument, you may be wondering why voting is an undisputable right for the 18 and 19-year-olds of the group. Voting is allowed at 18 because 18 is the age when the draft becomes applicable. If a citizen is willing to or forced to give his life for his fellow Americans, he should also get a say in who's leading. For these reasons, I beg of my fellow representatives to see the detrimental effects of Bill 6183 and vote nay. Thank you.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do not think we should pass Bill number 6183 to lower the voting age. It was argued that if 16-year-olds are given the privileges to do things such as drive, get married, or move out of the house, why can't they be trusted to vote? Or if they have to pay taxes, shouldn't they also be able to vote? Which raises the subject of taxation without representation. As stated by the lobbyists speaking against the bill, we have to draw the line somewhere. Some 14-year-olds are also being taxed. Will we allow them to vote too? If we let this bill pass, it could spiral in that direction, allowing children so young to vote, which would affect the whole state. The lobbyists also stated that in a way, the parents are representing children and teens too young to vote. The fact that 16-year-olds can get married and move out is hardly irrelevant voting is different. In 2019, over 44,000 people in Boston, Massachusetts voted in the city council election. Out of the 4 seats available, Julia Mejia won the 4th spot by a single vote. This goes to show that every vote counts, and one team making an uneducated choice while voting can affect the whole state. Teens are more likely to be reckless and have less political knowledge. This is why I urge you to vote no on House Bill number 6183. Thank you.
Representative Schindel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In a study done by the National Household Travel Service, it was found that 16 and 17-year-olds get into more crashes than any other age group. Many of these crashes were caused by these teens making idiotic decisions, such as checking their phones while driving, speeding, and not wearing seatbelts. If House Bill 6183 is passed, these same teens who can't even make mature decisions to protect their own health will be making decisions that could potentially have grave consequences for our entire state, for themselves, and for the public as a whole. While some 16 and 17-year-olds may be mature enough and knowledgeable enough to make these decisions, I believe that most are not. This is not just my opinion, but also the general public's as well. In a poll taken by an NBC News affiliate, it was found that 63% of participants were opposed to 16 and 17-year-olds voting. For these reasons, I hope you will vote nay for Bill 6183, lowering the voting age. Thank you.
Representative Tisway.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As stated by the opposing lobbyist on House Bill 6183, lower the voting age. Voting is not a mystical right that we must all partake in. We do not allow children, felons, or the institutionalized to vote. The health of our nation certainly does not rest on our ability to shovel warm bodies into the voting booth. As he has stated, the nation does not depend on how many people can get to vote, but how many well-informed citizens that get to participate in the voting process. Lowering the voting age to 16 would not help the point stated previously, as it would increase the population of uninformed or even misinformed voters that are actively participating in the election process. Although many will argue that there might be some well-informed 16 or 17-year-olds that will vote properly, but they are only a small minority in edge case, and their benefit will be completely overshadowed by the negative effect of misinformed voters. That is why you should vote nay on House Bill 6183.
The sponsors now may present rebuttal arguments. Representative Jendick, please find microphone.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Voting may not be a divine right, but this country is a divine democracy. As a country that is so heavily rooted in politics, shouldn't we want as many voters' perspectives as we can find? No vote is the wrong vote. It just might not agree with your personal opinion, which can and does happen with every age group. To say that parents can take away all the other significant rights 16 and 17-year-olds get is not exactly true. Parents are not able to legally revoke a driver's license without legal involvement, but can simply ground or punish their child for a certain amount of time. Therefore, voting could not be taken away by the parents, and it could be the 16-year-old's essential rights. I believe that maturity could be encouraged with this right because 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds will learn to take it seriously, maybe through trial and error, but will definitely get there, same as happened with driving. We don't eliminate their right to drive just because they are more likely to crash, which is natural with any beginning age group that gains a new right. To say that 16 and 17-year-olds might not care and might be irresponsible with this right is also not really true. While at a press conference for this bill, I was appalled at how many people believe this outrageous claim. Especially in the last few years, it has been made obvious that teenagers are demanding to be taken seriously in the political world. Teenagers across the state are organizing protests to support their beliefs. Some examples off the top of my head include protesting for or involving Black Lives Matter, abortion, and gun control in high schools, which, again, does not pertain to or affect the older citizens who vote on such topic in place of the actual high schoolers. To begin on the topic of parents influencing their teens one way or another, this is also not always true, or it could happen to every single age group.
Representative, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Debate is now open for supporting and opposing arguments from other caucuses. Representative Connor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Respected members of the House, I strongly urge you to vote no on House Bill 6183 as brought to you by the Adams Blue Caucus. On behalf of the Adams Blue Caucus, this bill would lower the legal voting age from 18 to 16 years of age, allowing them to vote in all state elections. If these 16-year-olds make one terrible decision, it would affect our state in an immensely negative way. The right to vote is only a right to those that can make informed decisions and contribute positively to the well-being of all members of this state. Again, I plead with you to vote nay on House Bill 6183. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Kwok.
I'm supporting House Bill 6183 to lower the voting age. Our founding fathers built this country with taxation and representation. 16 and 17-year-olds are already given responsibilities like driver's license, ability to get married, and obtain a passport. This bill has already been passed in 7 states and 5 countries and has shown good results. Vote yea for House Bill 6183.
Madam Speaker, I move the previous question.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The bill will now go on to third reading.
At this point, we are going to vote for the first time for our House session. Please remember, you must vote. You may only vote once, and you may vote one of 3 options: yes, no, or abstain. You can choose to either vote for the position you actually agree with, or award your vote to the side that you think did the best job presenting their arguments, whether you agree with them or not.
All of those in favor of passing the bill, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. All those opposed to the bill, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. Are there any abstentions? Please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. The clerk will give the count.
Madam Speaker, there are 15 yes votes, 36 no votes, and 1 abstention.
The bill receiving an insufficient number of votes is not passed.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we take up item number 2 on the calendar, HB 4006.
The clerk will read.
House Bill number 4006, a bill to require wireless carriers to provide device locations for emergencies upon the request of law enforcement. The people of the state of Michigan enact.
The bill is now open for debate. The sponsors of the bill may present opening arguments. Representative Villanueva Hines, Representative Sweet, Representative Rubenhoff, Representative Wong, silent argument. Representative Villanueva Hines, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Oh, Mr. Speaker, sorry. People need to carry a wireless phone on them at all times so their location can be found right away on their phone. Wireless cell phones are able to show the location right away to anyone in an emergency. After kidnappings, people think laws should require wireless carriers to provide wireless device location information when a law enforcement officer needs to locate a person when they need help. These wireless carriers are for emergencies so that they can find the location or so that you can tell them as soon as you need to. Law enforcement officer who requests device location information obtained under this act for personal use is guilty of a misdemeanor punishable by imprisonment not more than 93 days or a fine of $500. But a wireless carrier could establish protocols for the disclosure of device location information in response to a request from law enforcement.
Representative, your time has expired.
Representative Sweet, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. My esteemed...
Mr. Speaker.
Yes, sir. Mr. Speaker. Apologies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My esteemed Speaker, representatives, senators, and press members. If any of you are in doubt about House Bill 4006, then you should pay close attention to my words and the facts that I present. If you are wondering about the effectiveness of our bill, listen closely. In the state of Michigan, over 3,858,500 people own a cell phone or another wireless device, according to the 2015 statistic from the National Center of Education. Furthermore, 17 states have already adopted the Kelsey-Smith Act, which is the foundational act of this bill. The act has helped many, including an infant in Kansas who was kidnapped, according to Fox News. As you can see, House Bill number 4006 is a bill that promotes safety and the lives of others first. It is a bill that has saved lives and could save even more with your generous support. Vote yes for House Bill number 4006. And now I will let my fellow colleagues continue to answer the questions you consider. Thank you.
Representative Bruno, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am here representing House Bill 4006, Cell Phones and Emergencies. This bill is going to benefit all Michigan wireless users by putting their safety first and foremost. The 4006 bill is going to save lives and reduce crimes. The state of Michigan has people who go missing or abducted or have serious medical emergencies every day. Why not adopt a bill that would have these problems? House Bill 4006 will have wireless agencies send your location to the public safety agencies and will increase your chance of survival greatly. If you happen to be abducted for over 24 hours or more, your chances of survival are very low. With this bill, the law enforcement or public
public safety agencies could run much faster and more efficiently, possibly even within hours. We care about our Michigan citizens' safety, which is why we should pass this bill into action. Based on all this convincing testimony and evidence, I prompt my esteemed colleagues to pass this greatly needed piece of legislation. Remember to vote yes on this bill 4006. Thank you.
Representative Wong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Imagine yourself in a situation like this. You've been drugged on the sidewalk in bright daylight and all the street cameras have magically turned off. You wake up chained to a metal pole in a basement that looks like a torture chamber, which it is. Now, I'm sure this won't happen to you and I definitely do not want that to happen, but it's still a possibility. In these high-risk emergency situations, getting to the victim at all means is the most important. In that situation, you want to be saved as soon as possible. With warrants, you need to go through the court system to get a warrant to enter the household. In that time span, the victim you're trying to save could have died. Opposers may say that this bill will violate the Fourth Amendment or create privacy issues, but let's say you're a law enforcement officer and you step into a house, you spot a house burning down. Out of instinct, you'll go and try to save the residents of that house. You would not go all the way to the judge to get a search warrant and come back. Plus, the Fourth Amendment protects citizens from unreasonable searches and seizures by the government. In this case, this bill will only be enacted in emergency situations. Our goal is to protect our citizens as representatives. We want people to be as protected as possible. That's why I strongly suggest voting for House Bill 4006 to ensure your safety and protection. Thank you.
The opposing caucus may now present the opposing arguments. Representative Anderson, Representative Sutherland, Representative Flint, Representative Ryan, Representative Ferguson, Representative Cotton. You may be planning to vote. Representative Anderson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am here to oppose House Bill 4006, which requires wireless carriers to have device location for emergencies. I understand that people could be saved by this, but personally, I would not want to be tracked wherever I go. I don't believe that is something many people would want either. Everyone should be able to live a normal life without this unsettling thought in their minds. And I urge everyone to vote no on Bill 4006. Thank you.
Representative Sutherland, you have an hour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 4006 has a few major flaws. Out of these flaws, one of the most major happens to be corrupt law enforcement. This bill helps corrupt law enforcement to violate your privacy by lowering the amount of steps it takes to get your location. This bill makes tracking locations much easier for corrupt law enforcement. These corrupt law enforcers can turn this bill from a tool to a weapon. This is no way to fix the issue of kidnapping and could lead to more overall kidnappings. And when this is used as a weapon, there is no way to tell if an officer is using this bill for personal gain. This bill will make the problem worse than it already is and will lead to the harm of more people and could lead to more possible deaths. House Bill 4006 allows law enforcers to get someone's location without needing a warrant. There are many red flags in this bill, and this is one of them. In conclusion, House Bill 4006 will make the problem worse by giving criminals and corrupt law enforcers another weapon to stop, trap, even kidnap, leading to more deaths and sad stories. Remember to vote no on Bill 4006. Thank you.
Representative Flint, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm speaking in opposition of the House Bill 4006. This bill proposes the release of a person's location information from their cell phone by their cell service provider to the law enforcement that requests it in the case of an emergency. One of the flaws of this bill is the fact that the release of a person's location information is done without any further investigation into the situation, simply delivered when an emergency is declared. The laws before this bill include the need for a search warrant in order to receive the cell phone user's location. A search warrant requires real investigation into the situation and the approval of a judge before the cell service company can release information on the location of a person. Instead of passing a bill that easily allows an officer to request a person's private location, the simpler solution is to leave in place the laws that require a search warrant before any personal information is released to law enforcement. This is why I urge you to vote no to Bill 4006. Thank you.
Representative Ryan, you now have the floor.
Thank you,
Mr. Speaker. My fellow Americans, this bill allows for law enforcement to track our location, but when will we finally say enough? As of now, as you have heard, law enforcement already has a system of tracking their location. It is called a warrant. These warrants authorize police to carry out some action related to the administration of justice. With this warrant, the police are allowed to find the location of an individual. May I remind you that the police must prove to the judge that the cause will justify the search. This decreases the risk of an unreasonable search or a seizure. So if there is already a system put in place to track one's location with the consent of the judge due to probable cause, why then would we allow law enforcement free access without any limitations to our location? Please vote nay for House Bill 4006.
Representative Ferguson, you now have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In House Bill number 4006, several things are defined. Law enforcement agency, law enforcement officer, public safety agency, public safety answering point, and wireless carriers. But notice how it does not define an emergency. So what is an emergency? Is it a death threat, a stubbed toe, or a robbery in the house? You see, without this bill giving a proper definition of an emergency, there is no end to the possibilities of lies that could be told by a corrupt law enforcement officer or public safety officer to obtain one's location for malicious and dangerous intent. Furthermore, with no definition of an emergency, who says that the situation is dangerous enough to send help? One public safety officer's definition of an emergency may be much more dangerous than another's. So I urge you, vote against House Bill number 4006 to keep us truly safe. Thank you.
Representative Cowley, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 4006 infringes on people's privacy. This bill does this by allowing law enforcement to have access to your location at any given time. What is privacy? Privacy is the state or condition of not being observed or disturbed by other people. Privacy is important because without privacy, the government would be able to intrude on any affairs or relations. As a result, privacy is a necessary right to humans' daily lives. When they were this
Representative, your time has expired.
Thank you.
The sponsors may now present rebuttal arguments. Representative Van Westerhuis, Representative McNally, find a regular microphone. Representative Van Westerhuis, you now have the floor.
Thank you. You are not tracked wherever you go. You are only tracked if you're not even tracked. Your location is only given if a police officer has had a report sent in that this person is missing or hasn't been heard from or is in danger, and then it will send a report to the wireless carrier for their information, for the location. You don't get a red dot on a screen showing you where the person is. Secondly, a warrant would slow down the process tremendously. Because if you have to go through the legal system with the judge and get the warrant approved, it could take days. And in a kidnapping situation, every minute is crucial. Also, there are many safety steps already set up to avoid officers from using this illegally. And criminals can't use this, just to let you know.
Representative, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Representative McNally, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a $500 fine or 90 days in jail, like my colleagues has stated the warrants have not necessary in emergencies because we value our citizens over everything. That's why you should vote yes for HB 4006. Thank you.
Debate is now open for supporting and opposing arguments. Any other caucus? Representative Cuneo, Representative Connor, please make your way to the microphone. Representative Cuneo, now the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand in opposition of HB 4006 for these reasons. This bill will allow law enforcement to track people during an emergency. But what is the definition of an emergency? This seems to be a cover for law enforcement to randomly track people. This is extremely unreasonable due to the fact that this is a major breach in privacy. Not just that, if we open the door to let these people track us, what is to say that we will be able to keep corrupt law enforcement in check? This bill will take away our privacy and leave us open to being observed and tracked by corrupt people. This is why you should vote no for HB 4006. Thank you for your time, and again, I urge you to vote no for HB 4006 to protect the privacy we have as citizens. Thank you.
Representative Connor, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Esteemed members of the House, I bring before you my personal support for House Bill 4006 on behalf of my colleagues in the Jefferson Blue Committee. This is simply a tool to help restore our state's safety. It would require carriers to provide location information upon request from either a family or a judge to law enforcement officers for specific emergency situations. It would greatly lower the amount of death and severe injuries due to faster response times. It's time for Michigan lawmakers to put our safety morals front and center. I plead with you to again vote yes for House Bill 4006. Thank you, members, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I move the previous question.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The bill is now on third reading. All those in favor of passing the bill, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. All those opposed to the bill, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. Are there any abstentions? Please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. The clerk will give the count.
Mr. Speaker, there are 18 yes votes, 26 no votes, and 7 abstentions.
The bill receiving an insignificant number of votes is not passed.
Madam Speaker, I move that we take up item number 3 on the calendar, HB 4423.
The clerk will read.
House Bill number 4423, a bill to amend 1949 PA 300, entitled Michigan Vehicle Code. The people of the state of Michigan enact.
The bill is now open for debate. The sponsors of the bill may present opening arguments. Representatives McNally, Berry, Sutter, Grant, please find the microphone. Representative McNally, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm Representative McNally, and I am here to support House Bill 4423. House Bill 4423.
Representative, would you please move the microphone closer? Please speak up.
House Bill 4423 modifies speed limits for all modes based on the conditions of the roads, taking into consideration the number of driveways and intersecting roads. Most drivers that speed go the rate which they believe is safe and responsible based on the condition of the roads and the flow of traffic. House Bill 4423 modifies speed limits to accurately reflect these conditions. House Bill 4423 modifies the speed limits commercial trucks will be able to drive similar speeds as other vehicles, therefore cutting transportation costs and aiding the economy. I fully support the passing of House Bill 4423, and you should too. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Berry, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am Representative Berry, and I am here in support of House Bill 4423, which would be modifying speed limits. Without House Bill 4423, there are many issues that cause problems today. Some drivers will drive faster than the posted speed limit, others will drive slower. Some will go the posted speed limit, and commercial vehicles will have to drive the lower speed limit that they have, which will create congestion and clogging of the roads. Because commercial truck drivers must go slower than most other drivers, it takes them longer to transport goods and they could with higher speed limits, possibly slowing down the economy and causing higher transportation costs. Since vehicles are going at a variety of speeds, this increases the likelihood of drivers becoming frustrated with other drivers and reacting recklessly. In addition to this, frequent accidents caused by reckless drivers congest traffic as well. Other motorists could have to significantly slow down or detour to get around the crash, wasting time and resources. I strongly support the passing of House Bill 4423. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Sutter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am Representative Sutter, and I am here in support of House Bill 4423, modifying speed limits. HB 4423 will clear road congestion by modifying the speed limits on different types of roads to accurately reflect the layout of the road, taking into account the number of vehicular access points, or VAPs. Once in place, the modified speed limits will be 80 miles per hour on limited access freeways, 70 miles per hour on urban limited access freeways, and on all limited access freeways for buses, trucks, and other large commercial vehicles. Taking into account the VAPs, the modified speed limit will be 30 miles per hour on highway segments between 50 and 59 VAPs. The speed limit commercial trucks will be able to drive is a similar speed as other vehicles, therefore cutting transportation costs and aiding the economy. I fully support the passing of HB 4423. Thank you.
And Representative Grant.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Representative Grant, and I am here in support of House Bill 4423, modifying the speed limits. With the modified speed limits in place, all vehicles will be traveling around the same speed limits, preventing certain drivers from becoming upset with other drivers who are going slower or faster than the posted speed, resulting in them driving recklessly around other motorists. Modifying speed limits so all motorists are traveling around the same speed also should result in less overall accidents. With less accidents, people wouldn't have to slow down or detour to avoid the crash, resulting in much safer and less congested roads. In conclusion, because drivers are less likely to get upset and drive recklessly, and overall crashes should decrease, creating less road congestion, the less road congestion will allow police to move more freely and pursue other pressing matters, such as drunk driving. Commercial trucks will be able to deliver their goods sooner, which will greatly benefit commerce, and everyday motorists like yourselves will be able to get places quicker, cutting your transportation costs. This is why I support this phenomenal bill, HB 4423, and you should support it too. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The opposing caucus and now present the opposing arguments. Representatives Long, Wallenkamp, Falk, and Kuhnel, please find the microphones. Also Representative Connor. Representative Long, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Speaker. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here today to voice my opposition to HB 4423 regarding modifying the speed limit. This bill will raise the speed limit for motorists driving on many Michigan roads. It's a dangerous and irresponsible bill that ignores the safety of motorists and would be a deadly mistake. Many studies have shown that increasing speed limits will also increase the amount of deaths that result from crashes. Rising speed limits have been the cause for tens of thousands of deaths in the U.S. already. Do we want to contribute to this problem further? Let me explain. Studies have consistently shown that an increase in speed limit has led to increases in accident-related fatalities. A study done by the IHS shows that a measly 5 miles per hour increase in the maximum speed limit in the U.S. states were associated with an 8% increase in the fatality rate on interstates and freeways. They also show that over 36,000 deaths from 1993 in 2017 in the U.S., of course, could be attributed to increases in speed limits over the years. There are many studies like this, and they all show one thing: speed kills. This bill will kill people. And for what? Just to shave off some time in your daily commutes to minimally affect congestion? Is it worth sacrificing these people just to increase efficiency? No. Instead of promoting quote-unquote safety, this bill will instead be a deadly mistake. It is hopelessly naive and irresponsible to claim that this bill will promote safety by decreasing congestion and road rage. I urge my esteemed colleagues to defeat this unworthy piece of legislation. Remember to vote no on House Bill 4423. Thank you.
Representative Wallenkamp.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Fellow representatives, will this bill aspire for safer roads and higher commerce? It will unfortunately result in the exact opposite. Madison Blue mentioned that this bill would decrease road rage by raising truck speed limits to equal that of other vehicles. However, this is blatant falsehood, as the bill simply does no such thing. Though the bill increases semi-truck speeds, it raises other motorist speed limits by more than it raises trucker speed limits. A difference of 5 miles an hour becomes a difference of 10 miles per hour, thus inducing not less, but more road rage. Yet another issue: a semi-truck's stopping speed with the current limits reaches up to approximately 150 feet. By raising the speed limits, this bill would also raise this number, making it harder to avoid accidents. Motorists in general would also have much less time to react to a sudden swerve or even a complete halt from another vehicle. It is for these reasons and many others that I urge you to vote no on HB 4423. Thank you.
Representative Falk.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Bill 4423, modifying speed limits, would cause road conditions to be even more dangerous. House Bill 4423 is increasing speed limits, so drivers who tend to drive fast will be within the speed limit. But despite the change, people will still have the tendency to surpass the speed limit. Many drivers consider low-level speeding to be safe and normal, says Bernice Plant, PhD assistant lecturer at the School of Psychological Sciences at Monash University in Melbourne, Australia. Usually, people go over the speed limit by 5 to 10 miles per hour. With the increased speed limit, cars will go extremely fast at an uncontrollable rate, making the roads really risky and dangerous for other drivers. You should vote no for House Bill 4423 because it would make the roads more dangerous. Thank you.
Representative Connor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representatives, my friend and colleague Representative Wong posed the question, do we shave off a few seconds of our drive time by sacrificing the lives of innocent people? There is so much truth in that question. I remember the story told to me last night by Jeanette Ferguson, how in New York, she saw the trailer of a semi loosen from its hitch. She watched it cross over to a lane of oncoming traffic, only to wind up making a head-on collision with a minivan. Inside that minivan was a mother, a father, and their 3 precious children. When we raise the speed limits for all vehicles, including semi-trucks, risks go up. Lives go at stake. Families will mourn loss. It does not matter the conditions of the road. Let's not even factor in cell phone usage. Higher speeds equal more deaths caused by collisions. Members of the House, common sense tells you to vote no on House Bill 4432. Thank you.
Representative Polino. Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a student driver, I know that it is extremely scary driving, especially at high speeds. I'm sure that a lot of you can relate. Not only are there many student drivers on the road, but also senior citizens. There's about 1.2 million senior citizens that drive and 620,000 student drivers. These people tend to go at lower speeds, so it's not fair to these people to raise the speed limit, especially since they tend to drive slower, making them and others more prone to accidents. As people are quite slow and others will still speed since it is human nature, it will put the slower drivers at risk. The accidents that may occur will be deadlier than if the speed limit was slower and more reasonable. The opposing team wants you to believe that this bill is going to make the roads safer, but instead, it's apparent that it will put everyone's life in jeopardy, especially student drivers and senior citizens. Thank you for your time, and I urge you to vote no for HB 4423 so that we can keep our roads safe. Thank you.
The sponsors may now present rebuttal arguments. Representatives Ho and Chateau, please find the microphone. Representative Ho, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. While there are some things that can be argued, I must remind you of many things that have to be considered while thinking about this bill. As many of you know, the German Autobahn is a highway in Germany that has no speed limits. And even though there are no speed limits and you're able to drive as fast as you can, the Autobahn is the 4th lowest accident rates in the world. So, does that really say that driving faster can increase accidents? I think not. And, as many studies have shown, driving faster makes you pay more attention to the road instead of less. And since people are paying more attention to the road, the ability to avoid accidents is higher. Most accidents from cars are from distracted driving and driving under the influence. Speeding makes up a very small amount of accidents that happen on the road. So I urge you to consider to vote for House Bill 4423. Thank you.
Representative Chateau.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm Representative Chateau and I support HB 4423. The fact is that higher speeds do not always result in a net gain of fatalities. Sometimes, yes, higher speeds can reduce stopping times and can result in a higher likelihood of crashing. However, anyone who's been on the road knows how dangerous a driver that is driving too slow can be. If you are driving too slow and you try to pull out into another lane, the line of cars blocked up behind them can block you ever getting on the road. People have been run off the road for just this. Not to mention, the truck speed would actually be increased to the same speed as all other vehicles, as referenced on pages 6 and 7 of the bill. This bill would help trucks move at the same speed as other vehicles, and while yes, other vehicles do have their speed limits raised, trucks have their speed limits raised even more to meet with that. It is imperative that we apply this bill as soon as we can to reduce the overall amount of crashes matches and increase efficiency, helping with such issues as the supply chain shortage that we all know has destroyed our economy for many months. I fully support HB 4423, and I say you should vote yes on HB 4423. Thank you.
Debate is now open for supporting and opposing arguments from the other offices. Representative Schindel, you have the floor. Representative Wilson, please find the microphone.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My fellow representatives, I am here today to oppose House Bill 4423 to modify the speed limits for two very simple reasons. This bill may, in fact, decrease the amount of accidents, but that does not matter if it increases the amount of fatalities that come with the accidents. And that is the reality of higher speeds. Higher speeds means when a car impacts with another car, there will be more crushing impact and more people will die. Also, it is human nature for people to speed. Even if we up the speed limit, there will still be people who speed above that speed limit, just increasing the speed of the people who are speeding. These two reasons are why I oppose House Bill 4423 and hope that you will as well. Thank you.
Representative Wilson.
I support House Bill 4423, modify speed limits. By modifying the speed limits, it will clear up traffic, creating much needed efficiency on the roads. It will also reduce road rage, freeing up police to pursue more pressing matters. And it may help commercial trucks get places faster, reducing product shortages and potentially lowering gas prices. Driving faster does not make it more likely to get in an accident. As stated before, driving slower actually makes it more likely because people will drive recklessly around. This is why I support HB 4423, and you should too.
Madam President, I move the previous question.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The bill is now on third reading. All those in favor of passing the bill, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. All those opposed to the bill, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. Are there any abstentions? Please stand.
Madam Speaker, there are 11 yes votes, 39 no votes, and 1 abstention.
The bill receiving an insufficient number of votes is not passed.
I move that the House will stand to recess at the call of the chair.
Without objection, we will take a 5-minute recess.
Will the senators who are assigned to bills 1, 6, 7, or 8 please meet in the back at the double doors, as well as any senators who were not assigned to bills? Cecil will be taking you on a tour soon.
So just move that.
And then the last is so if you're on the bill,
It's just this
Madam Speaker I've ever seen. I think we can all agree. 我们过不来，我们不是。就是后台。
was she sleeping? You weren't? I thought you were sleeping.
And then we're going to start line here.
The House will come to order.
Madam President, I move that we take up item number 4 on the calendar.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I move that we take up item number 4 on the calendar, Senate Bill 991.
Clerk will read.
Hello, here representing Senate Bill number 991. The bill to authorize access to and use of experimental treatments for patients with a terminal illness. People of the Senate of Michigan enact that this act shall be known and may be cited as the Right to Try Act. Number 2, as used in this act, and unless the context otherwise requires.
The bill is now open for debate. The sponsors of the bill may present opening arguments. Representative Tsui, Representative Tsui Garcia, Representative Smith, please find a microphone. Representative Tsui, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I come in support of Senate Bill 991, Right to Try. As you know, that it takes years, if not decades, for treatments to be approved by the FDA. This is a crucial issue for some people, specifically people diagnosed with a terminal illness. As defined in Senate Bill 991, page 2, lines 22 and 24, terminal illness is a disease without life-sustaining procedures will soon result in death or state of unconsciousness from which recovery is unlikely. Some patients will not be able to receive life-saving treatment in time because of how long the testing procedure takes. The FDA testing procedure has 3 phases, with the first phase being the shortest, the second phase being slightly longer, and the third phase being the longest. Phase 1 tests 20 to 80 healthy patients for side effects. Phase 2 tests 100 to 300 patients for the effectiveness of the treatment. And finally, phase 3 tests up to 2,000 patients to find ideal dose response. To shorten the amount of time needed to access treatment, Bill 991, Right to Try, will allow patients to access treatments past phase 1. This bill will save lives. Remember to vote yes for Senate Bill 991. Thank you.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am here to speak in support of Senate Bill 991, Right to Try. Like Representative Sway told you, there's a problem with our healthcare system. Many people are dying from terminal illness due to the amount of time it takes for certain medications to get fully approved by the FDA. This bill will allow terminally ill patients to have access to experimental treatments, only requiring that the treatments pass the first phase of testing. This phase ensures the safety of these medications for the consumption or use of the terminally ill patients. Supporting this bill means that the patients actually have a chance for survival. Otherwise, treatments doctors wish to use to aid their patient may not be available for their usage because it had not completed the full process of being approved. This bill also requires the full consent of the patient before any treatments can be done, making them fully aware of the best, worst, and undetermined scenarios that could possibly happen as a result of medication or treatment. Based on all this persuasive testimony and evidence, I urge my esteemed colleagues to pass this desperately needed piece of legislation. Remember to vote yes on Bill 991, Right to Try. Thank you.
Representative Smith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am here today to present Senate Bill number 991, Right to Try. This bill could be very beneficial to the public. As my fellow Representative Sway said, the definition of terminally ill is a disease that will soon result in death, which is found on page 2, subsection 5C. Knowing the patient is counting down their days trying a treatment that could further their life whilst getting closer to a breakthrough in medicine is one of the best ways to help all terminally ill and get one step closer to saving lives. Through this bill, we can also become better educated with medicine, efficiently improving them for future generations. Based on all persuasive testimony and evidence, I urge my esteemed colleagues to pass this desperately needed piece of legislation. Remember to vote yes on Bill number 991, the bill for the right to try. Thank you.
The opposing caucus may now present the opposing arguments. Representative Wise, Representative Nunez, Representative Miller, Representative Ferguson, and Representative Babcock. Please kindly elect the microphone. Representative Wise, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm here to oppose Senate Bill 991. The other caucus has brought up many good points about this bill, but only the good stuff. But there's so much worse, such as we don't know what the dosage is. So if there is an overdose, it can kill the patient on the spot, whereas an underdose could do nothing at all. Or worse, if an overdose could double what the normal side effects would be, or an underdose could provide side effects but no health benefits. We know the side effects, but we don't know how effective these drugs or other items will be. Also, the manufacturers could use this bill as a way to scam people of their money by making an item that did nothing, or a headache medicine that they could overcharge on because they want more money. Now, I have something to ask. Now, imagine this. Someone you care about is terminally ill, and there's this drug that could possibly help them, and it does extend their life, but at the same time, it leaves them lying in a bed with only being able to look at you. Would you want that for somebody you care about? In theory, this is a good bill, but there's too many unknowns for this bill to pass. I thank you, and I urge the members of the House to vote against Senate Bill 991.
Representative Nunez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Fellow representatives, I am here today to oppose Bill 991, also known as Right to Try Act. These distributors and medical agencies just want a quick way to fill their pockets with money. They skip stage 2 and 3. Mind you, stage 2 is tasting dosage. These distributors can, after all, jack the prices. To the patient, this is a last chance survival. As Representative Wise said, it could help them live, longer, but make them suffer more. May I also shine the light on the fact that stage 1 testing is only a few months long. And this is why I want you to vote nay on Bill 991.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As it was stated earlier, Washington Green opposes the Right to Try Act because these experimental drugs have not passed phase 2 of the medical process. As it was stated earlier, phase 1 doesn't know the possible dosage, addiction, response of the patient, or response with other medication. However, this act does not consider these unknowns, so why would we risk all this, especially if someone is in fact terminally ill? In addition, under this act, manufacturers can but are not required to make this drug available for patients, but if they do, they can require the patient to pay. But this act has no stated limit, so it could be used as a money-making scam. In addition, the patient is required to have a statement that holds them responsible for all expenses unless the contract states otherwise. Which brings up the question, how reliable is a possible contract? This act also states that health insurance doesn't necessarily have to cover the cost of the experimental drug unless the contract states otherwise. I urge you to vote no for the Right to Try Act. Thank you.
Representative Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As stated, I'm Representative Ferguson, and I'm here in firm opposition to Senate Bill 991. As my colleague Representative Nunez stated already, phase 1 of FDA testing is the shortest phase of FDA testing for a drug, procedure, device, or whatever it is to go through, and the easiest to pass. it only tests side effects. So what it doesn't test is how do these drugs work in conjunction with other drugs that could possibly increase or decrease the effect of other drugs the patient may or may not be taking at the time. And we do not know about this because when testing, these are perfectly healthy patients who are taking, or who most likely are not taking other medications at the same time. So theoretically, these drugs could increase the dose, or could increase the effects of other drugs as well as those drugs to the point where they're injuring the patient or decrease them and do nothing.
Representative, your time is up.
Thank you, and please remember to vote nay on Senate Bill 991.
Representative Darko.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I am here to ask my fellow House members not to move forward with SB 991. As the other representatives of Washington Green have explained already, though there are good points to this bill, there are many issues with it as well. I believe that this vote will come down to how each person feels morally. So I ask you to consider this. Would you want someone you love to live a longer life but have a large possibility of suffering through that longer life? Or would you rather they live a shorter but less suffering pill, possibly happier life? Do you want to help these manufacturing companies get rich? Wouldn't you rather have the FDA take time to help test and approve these medical drugs and procedures? Are you comfortable with manufacturing companies never having to be personally involved and practically using these patients as human guinea pigs? And what about the minors who may not get a voice in the matter of whether or not to participate due to their parents? I am voting no on SB 991, and I'm asking that you do as well. Thank you.
The sponsors may now present rebuttal arguments. Representative Laura, Representative Abla. Representative Laura, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Washington Green has brought up some very key points in this debate, but they have some flaws to them. They have said that Phase 1 does not test for the dosage, which means that the dosage increasing too much could kill the patient. But this patient is already terminally ill anyway, and is already dying. And Phase 1 tests for the side effects, so they would be aware of those no matter what the dosage is. They have said that industries would want to profit from the medicines and other treatments that they distribute. The main point of this bill is to help the patient. It does not say anything about businesses making a profit or using it for scientific purposes. They've also said that the industry might not allow the patient to have it according to the bill. But once you say if they were interested in making a profit for themselves, why wouldn't they let them have it? It's because, as I said before, it is the patient who is the main focus of this bill. We are trying to save the terminally ill patient. I urge you, vote yes for Senate Bill 991. Thank you.
Representative Abla.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Washington Green Caucus has brought up some good points about this bill. However, the most important point on this bill is that the patient's consent is needed to have access to these treatments. The patient knows that the drug is not fully tested. The patient knows it could have worse side effects. The patient knows it could cause them more suffering. They agreed to these terms. Also, the patients are okay with this fact. I strongly urge you to support Senate Bill 991. Thank you.
Debate is now open for supporting and opposing arguments from the other caucuses. Representative Hagar and Representative Mueller. Representative Hagar, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What Washington Blue fails to understand is that this bill may not do good things. It will make everything worse. The people who try using the drugs may become addicted to these drugs. And even if the drugs do work, their life may be unbearable.
This is why you should vote for House Bill 991.
Thank you. Representative Zimmerman?
Thank you, Speaker. Madam Speaker. My name is Representative Zimmerman, and I support Bill 991, the right to track. As you previously heard, our current health system restricts certain treatments from terminally ill patients. This right to try bill will give terminally ill patients hope that their lives may be saved. The passing of this bill will allow terminally ill patients to pursue all treatments that have passed a PDA-approved Phase 1 trial. I believe this bill will significantly improve our current healthcare problem, and I urge you to vote yes for Bill 991, right to track. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I move the previous question.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The bill is now on third reading. All those in favor of passing the bill, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. All those opposed to the bill, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. Are there any abstentions? Please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. The clerk will give the count.
Madam Speaker, there are 23 total. We have 23 yeses, 24 noes, and 4 abstentions.
The bill, receiving an insufficient number of votes, is not passed.
Madam Speaker, I move that we take up item number 5 on the calendar. House Bill 5751.
The clerk will read.
House Bill number 5751, a bill to amend the 1938 PA 288 entitled Probate Code 1939, the people of the state of Michigan enact.
The bill is now open for debate. The sponsors of the bill may present opening arguments. Representative Janik, Representative McDowell, Representative Byron, Representative Shingle. Representative Janik, you have the floor. Representative Shingle, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My fellow representatives, the purpose of our bill, House Bill 5751, is to provide an alternative to the abandonment of babies in unsafe locations and unsafe situations. Because of the parents' reluctance to interact with another person
while surrendering their infant into their care. We would accomplish this by providing for the installation of safe haven devices at police stations, fire stations, and hospitals. These devices will provide an anonymous way to drop off their baby if the parent wishes. This bill not only affects the children who are spared being abandoned and possibly dying, but the mother as well, who are spared the shame and guilt that would come with abandoning their baby possibly to death. It also helps people who are looking to adopt a helpless child, because there will be more infants who have their rights fully surrendered, thus they are easier to adopt. Thank you for listening. Please vote yea for House Bill 5751. Thank you.
Representative Nunati, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am in support of Bill 5751. I'm here to tell you how this device operates. When a baby is placed in the device, it will set off a single or dual alarm off in 30 seconds, alarming all personnel. Now, these alarms are tested once a week, and firstly tested twice a day, so no failure can occur. Then the service personnel that works 24/7 will provide care for this baby. And this device is equipped with full climate control, so the baby has full air system. And we'll also have a camera so we can keep an eye on the baby. As my other opponent said, this will be placed in police, fire stations, and hospitals. So remember to vote for 5751. Thank you very much.
Representative Byron, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe that these safe haven devices will lower the unsafe abandonment of babies. A reason the abandonment of babies is so high is because the parents have immense pressure put on them when they have to surrender the babies in person. These safe haven devices will help the parents avoid guilt, shame, or condemnation. As a result of the anonymity of SHD, less babies will be abandoned while more babies are being surrendered safely and legally. Many parents don't really want to give up or abandon their babies. It's only that they can't handle it financially or psychologically. Many parents that plan to give up their babies are devastated at just the thought alone. Now, if they had to go through hours of paperwork, knowing what people would think of them and exactly what they were about to do, they would be crushed, embarrassed, condemned, and or have feelings of guilt or shame. The SHD cuts that process entirely and makes it easier altogether for parents. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my speech. Sorry. Please vote yea for House Bill 5751.
Representative Shield, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My fellow representatives, I would like to begin my speech by making a simple statement. Babies are being abandoned, left on the side of the road, either to die or to be found by some person who happens to pass by. These children are being abandoned in this way, not because their parent wants them to die, but because they see no way to surrender their child without feeling the shame, humiliation, and guilt that comes with handing over your child to another person. If our bill is passed, House Bill 5751, these parents will have another option. This option would be to place their child in sanitized and climate-controlled safe haven device, anonymously and contact-free, to make this difficult decision as easy as possible for the parent. Once the baby is in the device, it would notify an emergency response provider. If even one child's life is saved with this device, it is worth it. I implore you to vote yea for House Bill 5751. Thank you for your time.
The opposing caucus may now present the opposing arguments. Representative Crowder, Representative Wyman, Representative Zimmerman, and Representative Wang. Representative Crowder, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am Representative Crowder speaking about Bill 5751, which is safe haven devices. These aren't really devices. These are recycling bins for children. This can be terribly unhealthy. For starters, children are torn from the parents and then spend years in the fiery webs of foster care. This could also be unhealthy for adults too, as they don't have physical human contact, but instead contact with a cold-hearted machine. This promotes parents to drop off their newborns in a box that looks like a library return. Stop.
The House will come to order.
If you love children, don't leave them in the hands of a box, but instead in the hands of a loving, caring human being. Thank you for your time. I strongly advise you vote nay on Proposition 5751.
Representative Wyman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am Representative Lennon, and I see that House Bill 5751 is unreliable. First off, since the newborn safety device has technological components, there could very well be possible glitches in the system that, God forbid, harm the child very gravely. Second of all, the bill does not specify what will happen if a harmful foreign object is placed on purpose in the newborn safety device. Third, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services is responsible and required for the specifications of the device. And the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services is also in charge of the foster care system, which, as you know, is not doing well. Based on this evidence, I urge my estimated colleagues to defeat this unworthy piece of legislation. Remember to vote no on House Bill number 5751. Thank you.
Representative Zimmerman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm Representative Zimmerman, and I would like to start off with a question. 72 hours. What can you get done in that time? That's 3 days. You can get 3 days to choose if you wanted to give up your child after its birth. That is, assuming the mother doesn't need to stay in a hospital or at home after the birth, or the baby isn't going through any special treatment and the parents are able to get to the nearest device. This simply is not enough time to make a life-changing decision on a whim or get peer pressured into the abandonment. Also, if the parent is in a bad state of mind or going through a lot of rough situations, they may think it's better to give up their child to help themselves. But then, if they wanted the child back, they would have to reclaim the child within 28 days or go through a long, harsh court process. 3 days is also not enough time to get a birth certificate or an information sheet about a child's health and birthplace. If a parent were to turn in their child, there wouldn't be much information that the parent could give. This could be extremely detrimental to the child's health. If it is ill or has been abused, the caretakers are uninvolved. There would be no direct liability for it if the child gets injured, sick, or even dies after placed in the safe haven device. In addition, during the 28 days of waiting, the child won't be getting any motherly care and will be given a trained caretaker. Motherly care is extremely important, especially towards newborns, and could affect the way they feel greatly. I urge you to vote no on Bill 5751, Safe Haven Devices. Thank you.
Representative Wang, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to paint a picture. A newborn is stolen from their parent or parents and discarded off in a safe haven device in a few counties over. The given bill states that if the baby was given with no paperwork, there would be a note in the device location county's news that would say a baby was surrendered. This would not be sent to the county where the parents live, and they would have 28 days to find their child. If the baby's location was found after this time frame, there would be a long process for the parents to reclaim their child through the court system, which we know can take a long time and cause a lot of trauma. On the off chance, if they were able to find the child within the 28 days, a verification process would also need to be followed through, which could also take quite some time. A similar situation could happen with one abandoning parent and one non-abandoning parent. The abandoning parent may decide on their own and make the move to discard the child in the device. The same outcome could occur with the non-abandoning parent fighting long and hard to reclaim and find their child, making the anonymity of safe haven devices detrimental. These likely scenarios show just how easy and accessible trashing babies in safe haven devices may be. If they are located at public areas throughout the state, they would be noticed by hundreds, maybe thousands of people, and would introduce many people to the idea of discarding and giving up their child. This would then lead to possible increases in child abandonment. Rather than supporting this act, we should try supporting the parents. After all, it is more beneficial for children to be raised by their own parents than to be sent through the broken foster care program and or the adoption timeline. But that is not added in this bill. So, based on all this persuasive testimony and evidence, I urge my esteemed colleagues to defeat this unworthy piece of legislation in order to save our newborns, future generations, from these very outcomes. So vote no on Bill 5751. Thank you.
The sponsors may now present rebuttal arguments. Representative Sway and Representative Bader. Representative Sway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, it is not a library drop-off device or a baby recycler. That is simply crude language that is used to devalue our bill. Second of all, the fact that you argue that the foster system or the adoption system is broken, that is completely out of our reach, and we cannot pass any legislature that would help us remedy those problems. On another note, you also stated that there might be technical glitches inside the system, but as we have stated, the device is checked physically and visually checked twice a day, and then tested once a week for any faults. So the likelihood of anything going wrong would be far lower and less probable. Thank you.
Representative Bader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Bill 5751 can have no sufficient argument, and I will explain why. I want each of you to imagine right now finding an infant, permanently injured or dead in a dumpster or on the side of the road. If the installment of a safe haven device saves even a single newborn, any argument made against them becomes unjustifiable. The idea of allowing a child to be killed by opposing an option that would have saved them is cruel and inhumane. Please, please vote in support of Bill 5751 and join me in actively preventing the legal abandonment of Michigan infants. Thank you.
Debate is now open for supporting and opposing arguments from the other caucuses. Representative Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm opposing House Bill 5751 about safe haven devices. If a child is injured, there's no liability provided. 72 hours is not enough time to make such a huge decision, especially how new mothers are often suffering with postpartum depression. Instead of supporting safe haven devices, we should focus on reaching out to pregnant women. No child deserves to be put in a box. Vote no for House Bill 5751. Thank you.
Representative Ferguson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm Representative Ferguson, here in support of House Bill 5751. Many babies are abandoned every year because their parents either cannot take care of them or cannot face handing their child over to someone else. That's why I am in support of safe haven devices, because they can be built inside of a fire, or police station, or even hospital. That is, and parent can anonymously give up their child in a way that within 30 seconds, someone with an emergency responder will be on their way to collect the child and care for them. And that is why I strongly urge you all to vote in favor of House Bill 5751.
Madam Speaker, I move the previous question.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The bill is now on third reading. All those in favor of passing the bill, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. All those opposed to the bill, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. Are there any abstentions? Please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. The clerk will give the count.
Madam Speaker, there are 23 yes votes, 24 no votes, and 4 abstentions.
The bill receiving an insufficient number of votes is not passed.
Madam Speaker, I'm sorry. Mr. Speaker, I move that we take up item on calendar, Bill HB 4162. The clerk will read.
House Bill number 4162, a bill to amend 1976 PA 451, entitled The Revised School Code. The people of the state of Michigan enact.
The bill is now open for debate. The sponsor of the bill may present opening arguments. Representative Anderson, Representative Sutter, Representative Ferguson, Representative Flynn. Representative Anderson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill, number 4162, acknowledges the problem that public schools have, which is bullying. It solves the problem by giving age-appropriate consequences for kids who bully, not just on school grounds, but places related to school. School events, field trips, and school buses, for example. Bullying may seem small, but it can change lives for the worse. 29.9% out of 15,686 students have been involved in bullying. Of others by others in both. That may not seem like much, but any amount of bullying is too much. There is a student whose nose was broken because of it and another one who took his own life. No person should have to suffer through bullying. It is not good for giving kids a good childhood if they have fear that a bully is going to hurt them physically or emotionally. With Bill 4162, the problem will be fixed by prohibiting bullying and enforcing better policies in school to help students be encouraged to learn. Thank you.
Representative Sutter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support House Bill 4162 because most of our schools today have one problem in common, which is bullying. Bullying is a massive problem for students affected by it. It creates a very bad learning environment for students and can be very bad for their mental health, which can affect how well a student is learning or how well a student is paying attention. Few students have sadly taken their life due to bullies, and more have suffered serious injuries from these bullies. However, House Bill 4162 will tremendously help with the serious bullying problem. Our bill will give bullies age-appropriate consequences for their actions. These punishments will greatly discourage bullying and overall provide students with a safer learning environment and help them keep a better mental state. In conclusion, House Bill 4162 will greatly decrease the amount of bullying and will overall provide students with a better and safer learning environment and will help them maintain a stable mental state. Remember to vote yes on House Bill 4162. Thank you.
Senator Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Some may argue that some schools already have handbooks that cover a bullying policy, so we don't need this bill. But how many of those schools actually implement those policies? While some may implement them, most schools don't actually put those policies into practice. House Bill 4162 won't simply let schools just write policies with specific rules and guidelines, only to forget about them a year later. House Bill 4162 will force school districts to develop policies and put them into practice. The board or board of directors for each school district will be required to develop a policy and adopt it within 6 months of the passage of this bill. However, they will have necessary guidelines that will be displayed by a model policy. That model policy must be fully developed and released by the Department of Education within 30 days after the passing of this bill. So I implore you, vote for House Bill number 4162 to prohibit bullying and actually get the bullying and harassment policies implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'm speaking on House Bill 4162 to prohibit bullying. Bullying is a common problem in schools all over the state of Michigan for many reasons, including the simple fact that most bullies are not kept in check while they are in school. Bill 4162 will change that. The model policy created will encourage better behavior from the students in the school by discouraging bad behavior. When a report of bullying is made and thoroughly investigated until it is proven to be true, the bully will be punished for his actions, and a report of his wrong actions will be added into his permanent disciplinary record. After a report of harassment has been added to his permanent record, the bully will then be discouraged from wanting to continue to add more to his past records, guiding him in the right path to kinder behavior and a cleaner record in the future. With the support of this evidence and testimony, I urge you to vote for House Bill 4162 to prohibit bullying. Thank you.
The opposing caucus may now present the opposing arguments. Representative Rubenap, via Nueva Hines, Sweet, McNally, Wong, Van Osterhout. Rubenap, Representative Rubenap, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My opposition to House Bill 4162 is that this bill should not be used for all public schools. Every public school is different. Schools vary from how many students, the majority of the culture of the students, number of staff, and more. This bill won't be necessary for the federal government or state government to put in place, and should be left to local governments to decide. We need to be sensitive to all of the students' needs and not to force them under one policy. Based on all this persuasive testimony and evidence, I urge you to say no on Bill 4162. Thank you.
Via Nueva Hines, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Legislation is not necessary because the school districts already have an anti-bullying policy adopted by the State Board of Education in September 2006. The policy assists local and intermediate school districts and public school academies to address conditions for learning and facilitate implementation of local policies to effectively intervene in incidents of bullying and harassment. So this proven, we don't need this bill. So I urge you to not vote for House Bill 4162. Thank you.
Representative Speaker on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to let you and my fellow representatives, senators, and press members know that we cannot be fooled by what may seem like a good bill. Instead, we must realize a question that I believe shakes the very foundation of House Bill 4162. My question is this: what will be done about if the school fails to implement this bill in their school policy? Are they taken to a board of education? But even then, all the school may get is, metaphorically speaking, a slap on the wrist. And what if the school continues to fail implementation and then gets taken back to the Board of Education? Do we continue this constant tug of war until the school closes or rejects the anti-bullying policy? How can this bill that was designed to help do just that? If there's a war going on between the school and the board, this bill only causes more hassles and problems for the school and the Board of Education. This is just one of the very many reasons to why we are saying vote nay for House Bill 4162. Thank you.
Representative McNally, on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Do you really want to waste tax money on another rule? These children are not complying now to the rules. Let's start to use the rules and make the consequences for these rules and policy already in place. Before holding the children responsible for the consequences, let's be honest. Honest respect begins at home. Vote nay, save state tax dollar, and implore parents to teach respect at home.
Representative Wong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Cyberbullying is a major issue faced by students that needs to be addressed. Sitting behind a screen typing hateful messages to another student can truly ruin the mentality and views of the student. So, I'd like to ask, if this bill is truly preventing bullying in general and trying to help the environments of students, why isn't the bill doing anything against cyberbullying? We must consider other aspects of the students' lives that affect school learning. If bills like this get passed, bullies will easily find ways to bully outside of school to avoid punishment. If this bullying outside of school goes to a certain extent, this bill will backfire greatly. The schools only have control of classrooms, school premises, buses, bus stops, and school-sponsored events. This does not include aspects of cyberbullying. Even when government is in control of problems like this, issues like this in the bill have slipped the grasp of the representatives supporting the bill. You see, it seems cyberbullying has been overlooked by these representatives. Do they even care about the students? Using Representative Anderson's words, no person should be bullied. Then why are you overlooking cyberbullying? I recommend those to think about the new innovative world that we live in and how technology now will play a major role in everything. Vote no in House Bill 4162. Thank you.
Representative Mr. Howard. Floor.
Thank you, Speaker, sir. Ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, on page 2, lines 8 and 9, Bill 4162 states that the bill will have a procedure for reporting acts of bullying and harassment anonymously. However, on the very next page, it is listed that there will be consequences and age-appropriate actions for a person found to have falsely accused another of bullying. Now, obviously, there is a glaring issue with this. Any student who's abused the report system while remaining completely anonymous, flooding it with false reports, wasting the time of the official put in place to assess the claim, getting the accused in trouble for something they didn't do, and wasting school resources, all while getting off completely scot-free. There's also the trouble of teachers. While this bill, in theory, should make it extremely easy for a teacher of a school member or a school staff member to report a harassment issue, The problem is that many teachers just will not care enough about the students to take time and go out of their way to report a bullying incident, the same way they don't care about a student bullying in the first place. The experiences that I've had with public school teachers I've been around is that they just don't have a large interest with how the students in their classes are treated, only in what kind of grades they produce. In essence, rendering this bill completely useless. And on top of everything else, this bill would only encourage out-of-school fighting, because out of school, there's no teacher to try to stop the fight. There's no authority figure to step in and fight that would normally end within seconds, would just be pushed further and further, resulting in serious physical harm and possibly even the loss of the student's life.
Representative, your time has expired.
Thank you.
The sponsors may now present rebuttal arguments. Representative Allen, Representative Ryan. Representative Allen, on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill, you brought up cyberbullying. This bill is not focused on cyberbullying, although the discipline from school discourages bullying, like in general, and it will not cover all bullying. And then somebody brought up that schools like vary. There is a mono policy, but the schools are able to add whatever they need, because I know like certain public schools are different than others. And then you brought up bullying outside of school. This bill is not covering bullying outside of school. So, like, you're not going to be able to stop all bullying, but this bill should stop bullying inside school and discourage the bullies from bullying. Yes. Thank you.
Representative Ryan.
So when we're creating this bill, the goal is to eliminate bullying in the public schools. We cannot force that out of the government's premises that it has a rule over. So outside bullying, that is a good thing that we should try to fix. But as far as this bill, we can only fix the schools. The cyberbullying, that too is something that the government can't fix yet. Well, in this bill. Other bills created later can also fix this problem if it is a need to be, which it is a big problem, and I think it should be looked at in the future. As far as it was brought up that the handbooks or policies were already created for public schools. However, lots of those schools don't enforce those policies, especially with punishments. So that's a little not the best. As far as tax money for these task forces, it is not enforced in the bill that the schools have to pay these task forces that are helping get rid of this bullying, but it is the policy of the school to decide whether that is reasonable or not. Please vote for Bill 4162 to stop bullying. Thank you.
Debate is now open for supporting and opposing arguments from the other offices. Representative Babcock, Representative Ferguson. Representative Babcock, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As it has previously been stated, the premise of this bill is good, but I find too many flaws in it to move HB 4162 forward. I find the lack of coverage outside of school grounds unsatisfactory. And what about those who need counseling for the bullying they experienced? This bill is not covering that. If you truly want to help those who have been bullied, think about all the kids being bullied off of school grounds as well. We need a bill that will help everyone, not just a select few. Vote no to pass this bill along. Thank you for your time.
Representative Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bullying in schools is a huge problem, and that is why I'm here in support of House Bill 4162. There really are not proper punishments in place in the school system, which then promotes a very bad learning environment. Therefore, we must help our future generations by creating entitled rules in the schools to give students a better working environment and give more protection for our children in the school system. And that is why I encourage everyone here to to vote yes on House Bill 4162. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I move the previous question. Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The bill is now on the third reading. All those in favor of passing the bill, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. All those opposed to the bill, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. Are there any abstentions? Please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. The clerk will give the count.
Mr. Speaker, there are 19 yes votes, 31 no votes, and 1 abstention.
The bill receiving an insufficient number of votes is not passed. I move that the House will stand recess at the call of the chair.
We are going to take a brief recess. Go ahead and stretch your legs just a couple minutes, and then we're going to move back into it. Any senators who did not go on the tour, would you please meet in front of the double doors, and you'll be leaving as soon as you are all gathered.
going to say, Olivia?
Madam Speaker, I move that we take up item number 7, calendar HB 4071.
The clerk will read.
House Bill number 4071, a bill to amend 1931 PA 3208, entitled the Michigan Penal Code, the People of the State of Michigan Act.
This bill is now open for debate. The sponsors of the bill may present opening arguments. Representative Connor, Hayner, Mullenkamp, and Kwok. Please find the microphone. Representative Connor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I have in my hand House Bill 4071, and I ask you, are you a supporter of justice? I will need you to imagine right now that you are unable to speak, not verbally nor effectively communicate in any way due to a severe impairment. You can't tell your mom that the teacher at school beats you. You can't articulate to your sibling that the special needs provider that you have been entrusted to has molested or violated you. You can't even explain to a therapist that your own relative has raped you. I ask you again, members of this House, do you support justice? HB 4071 is presented to you on behalf of children who cannot defend themselves. Abusers are to be condemned for their heinous and reprehensible acts. It is your duty to address this issue. House Bill 4071 does address this issue, and I call on you to vote yes after taking in the information to be presented before you today. Thank you again, Madam Speaker.
Representative Hayner, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to have a chance to talk about House Bill 4071. Believe it or not, children with a disability are 3 times more likely to be abused and neglected from the developing age. These children are unable to talk and unable to tell people what happened. This makes them more of a target than any other non-disabled child. The cruel acts scar these children for life. Their life is already hard enough as it is. Why make it harder by not passing this bill? There are cases where the child's abuser was not sent to jail for a long enough time due to the lack of evidence. To help these children, vote for House Bill 4071. Thank you.
Representative Mullenkamp, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Fellow representatives, I am here with my fellow colleagues to promote House Bill 4071,
regarding the abuse of vulnerable children. In the second issue of the Leader, this bill was called by my opponents, the Madison Blue Team, vague, but it is in fact the opposite. Vulnerable children are the main target for abuse for two main reasons. They cannot defend themselves, and they cannot give testimony. Vulnerable adults are already protected by the law, but invalid children are still subject to these issues. HB 4071 would address this by increasing sentence duration. Our bill would clear up cases such as the 2019 case, where autistic invalids were abused by their caretakers. When caught, they were given virtually no punishment because there was no clear law regarding the issue. These people have no legal support yet, which is why we need you to vote yes on HB 4071. Thank you.
Representative Kwok, you now have the floor.
Madam Speaker. The abuse of a vulnerable child is, our bill is planning to solve this problem by lengthening the jail time of the abusers. The second degree of abuse is when serious physical harm or serious mental harm is caused. This bill will be increasing the jail time from 10 years to 15 years. For abuse of third degree where physical harm is caused, jail time will be increased from 2 years to 3 years. In the fourth degree, when a risk of harm or injury is posed, the jail sentence will be increased from 1 year to 2 years. Since one does not want to be in jail for a longer time, they're less likely to commit the crime. I mean, who wants to spend another year of their life in jail missing out on what life has to offer? Being in jail for longer will prevent the abuser from continuing to abuse the child. It will also help them think about their mistakes so they won't repeat it again. Vote yea for House Bill 4071 to make a difference in the community and help bring justice to the vulnerable children who can't defend themselves. Make the abusers pay for their crime. Thank you.
The opposing caucus may now present the opposing arguments. Representative Berry, Poe, McNally, Sutter, Grant, Starto. Please find a microphone. Representative Berry, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am Representative Berry, and I am opposing House Bill 4071. House Bill 4071 claims that by slightly extending jail times for abusers of vulnerable children, they will deter future abusers. But not only is this a bad way of trying to solve the problem presented, House Bill 4071 also heavily relies on the hope of culprits possibly reforming more in prison. This is not how the problem should be solved. House Bill 4071 is also too vague, which allows possible misjudgment for the guilty. House Bill 4071 also fails to account for many other circumstances which will be brought up later. This is why I strongly oppose House Bill 4071, and you should too. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Poe, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm here to ask a very important question. How do we know the user will change in jail? A 2018 study by the U.S. Department of Justice showed records for 401,288 prisoners just released. In the first year, 44% of prisoners were rearrested. Within 3 years, 82% of prisoners were rearrested. This very clearly shows that convicted criminals don't change very much in prison. This bill will not only incarcerate people for a longer period of time, but it will also potentially get them thrown back in for even longer. Which leads to another question. How will this affect taxpayers? At the moment, the fee for prisoners is $42,000 a year. If this bill passes, that fee will increase to $211,000 a year. Overall, the state will require a minimum of $400 million to $1 billion in taxpayer dollars. This is why I think we should not support House Bill 4071. Thank you.
Representative McNally, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand before you in opposition to House Bill 4071, the abuse of a vulnerable child, because of the insignificant punishment allowed for such a terrible crime. A few years doesn't seem like a long enough time. This bill provides varying degrees of punishment, though it classifies child abuse convictions as a felony. Yet it fails to appropriately place convicted felons to prison for a meaningful time. Remember to vote no to House Bill 4071. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Sutter, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm Representative Sutter. I'm opposing House Bill 4071, Abuse of a Vulnerable Child. This bill is too broad and non-inclusive. There are several scenarios that 4071 does not account for. Let me take you through a hypothetical situation. Imagine both parents are minors. Now imagine both parents are vulnerable minors. How will this bill help them? There's already a bill protecting vulnerable adults. What if the abuser is a vulnerable adult? As you can see, it's incredibly unfair to those who are excluded by it. How will those miserable people receive justice? Dear representatives, in your good conscience, do you perceive this to be morally right? I am fully against the passing of House Bill 4071, and you should be too. Thank you.
Representative Grant, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm Representative Grant, and I'm opposing House Bill 4071, Abuse of a Vulnerable Child. I would like to ask the question, are we, through this bill, being reactive or proactive? Like Representative Poe stated, House Bill 4071 would cost taxpayers a large sum of money to care for incarcerated persons. Could this money be better spent toward increased funding for other programs that could help eliminate abuse in the first place? These programs could include mental health programs, substance abuse programs, and others like these, as they are common underlying factors in child abuse cases. In addition to this, an incident Madison Green mentioned was where nonverbal children were abused in a care facility. What isn't mentioned is that this facility was severely understaffed. Instead of putting taxpayer dollars towards supporting criminals in prison, this funding could have been redirected to this understaffed facility, thus potentially eliminating abuse in the first place. This is why I passionately oppose House Bill 4071, and you should too. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Charteau, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am Representative Charteau, and I oppose HB 4071. Page 2, line 29, subsection D of this bill states that the requirements for classifying a child as vulnerable are that a doctor diagnose the mental illness and that it impact your life somehow. That means the only thing standing between you and a doubled sentence is a doctor's opinion about mental illness. This will be abused by medical professionals. Assistant HHS Secretary Rachel Levine said, quote, "As a pediatrician, I know how important care that affirms a child's true identity can be." That means our top health secretaries believe that without mutilation, kids will die. Just 1 month ago, 3 8th grade students at Keough Middle School in Wisconsin were accused of sexual harassment for misgendering a student. If this bill passes, misgendering a child could lawfully double your prison sentence. That is not right. I oppose HB 4071 as it would allow doctors to decide your fate regardless of your innocence. I oppose HB 71 as it creates more problems that it could potentially solve. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The sponsors may now present rebuttal arguments. Representative Pungyo, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the House. Thank you for your time. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to promote HB 407. As already stated by my colleagues, this bill is put in place to protect children who are nonverbal. The opposing side says that putting these people in jail that are abusing these children, that they won't change, but what else are we going to do with these? Okay, the opposing team says that what if minors are the parents of these vulnerable children and are abusing them? Well, this doesn't really have anything to do with this bill because that goes under a different, like minors will be judged how it is in. Okay. This bill was put. Okay. Does it seem right to leave these children unprotected to deal silently with the abuse? The answer is no, it is not right. Why should we make an effort to provide this protection for adults but not for innocent children? We want to bring light to this topic. Offenders are abusing children in the shadows because they think they can get away with it because it is not, there is no set law against it. If this bill is passed, these people will be thrown into prison for longer than before. This not only sparks fear in them, but also keeps these horrible people from working in our community. By saying no to passing this bill, we are saying no to protecting innocent lives. Also, by the opposing team saying that this is raising taxpayer dollars, this is invalid. This is the fact that money put towards this incarceration will come from an already set fund. Therefore, the taxes of the people will not be raised. On top of that, any kind of incarceration cost, and even if it did cost us more, the protection of innocent children is priceless, meaning that even if it is more expensive to lock up these offenders, it is worth it, so we don't have the evil people working in our community. This is why I urge you guys to vote yes for House Bill 4071.
Debate is now open for supporting and opposing arguments from other caucuses. Representative Crowder and Nunez, please find microphones. Representative Crowder, you have the floor.
I hypothetically believe that HB 4071 is misguided. Jail does not produce mortality or abuses to our minors. The use of this bill may also be abused to place law-abiding citizens in prison.
Representative, your time has expired.
Representative Nunez, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the House. Please lend a moment of your time and listen to why HB 4071 should be passed. This bill protects nonverbal and unable to testify for abused children. Why would someone say no to protecting vulnerable children? We need to shine light on this problem. This bill punishes the abuser by adding jail time. I cannot ask you enough to vote yay for Bill 4071.
Madam Speaker, I move the previous question.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The bill is now on third reading. All those in favor of passing the bill, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. All those opposed of passing the bill, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. Are there any abstentions? Please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. The clerk will give the count.
Madam Speaker, there are 29 yes votes, 14 no votes, and 8 abstentions.
The bill receiving a sufficient number of votes is passed.
Madam Speaker, I move that we take up item number 8 on the calendar, SB 98.
Clerk will read.
Senate Bill number 98, a bill to provide compensation and other relief for individuals wrongfully imprisoned for crimes, beating with the state of Michigan Act.
This bill is now open for debate. The sponsor of the bill may present opening arguments.
Aaron Lee, Representative Aaron Lee. Alderson
Ferguson, and Clark. Representative Lee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support Senate Bill 98, wrongful imprisonment compensation. Compensation without needing to sue. Wrongfully convicted people will be compensated on jail time, medical expenses for injuries sustained in prison that affect them outside of prison, and economic damages, including lost wages and costs paid to prove the plaintiff innocent. This bill also clears the plaintiff of that crime from the criminal record. To be compensated, the plaintiff must have been convicted of one or more crimes under state law. On retrial, the plaintiff was declared not guilty, and the plaintiff provides strong evidence to prove their innocence. These requirements are in place to prevent anyone from taking advantage of this bill. We believe everyone deserves equity and justice, and this bill will bring our state in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am Alan Alderton, and I will be presenting a speech on Bill SB 98. This is the Wrongful Imprisonment Compensation Act. This bill is about action against the state if they have been in prison for a crime they have not committed. To make up for the time they have spent in jail, the court will present up to $60,000 per year for each offense charged in law. The court will also remove the wrongly convicted crime that is only if the order provides record of the arrest or the post. This will allow access to the plaintiff to get a job easier and get a professional license. I am expressing my support for the Senate Bill SB 98, a bill that removes individuals for wrongly imprisoned persons. I request you to vote yes to this bill. Thank you for listening.
Representative Ferguson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am Representative Ferguson, and I'm here in support of Senate Bill 98. Now, I'm going to go over some of the details of this bill. So, to receive compensation under this bill, the plaintiff must have spent at least 1 year in a state prison. Then, after the plaintiff brings an action against the state of Michigan, they would file with a state court, and then they must provide clear DNA or other evidence of innocence. And the charges can only be brought by the person wrongfully imprisoned. When serving for more than one crime, no money will be awarded unless all charges have been overturned. There will be no compensation for a previously entered plea of guilty or nullo contendere, and money will be awarded for reasonable attorney fees and medical expenses stemming from time in prison that affected after release. The compensation is accepted, no further action may be brought against the state, and if the plaintiff is filing after the effective date of this bill, they must file within 3 years of the entered innocent verdict, and if they file, thank you. And please remember to vote yes on Senate Bill 98.
Representative Babcock, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thoroughly believe that SB 98 is a necessary bill. Those who have been victims of wrongful imprisonment deserve compensation for these injustices. As my fellow representatives have previously stated, these victims of wrongful imprisonment have lost precious time, jobs and wages, family, friends, and their homes, all because of the wrongdoings of our government's justice system. We cannot give back lost time to those wronged, but this bill can help them get back on their feet. This is why we must move forward with SB 9A. I imagine how you would feel if you were someone you deeply cared for was wrongfully imprisoned. I implore you to think about that as you grow. Those wronged by wrongful imprisonment deserve to be able to live normal lives just like me and you. SB 9A can help accomplish this. All of these statements are why I am asking my fellow members of the House to vote yes. And as you vote, ask yourself, how would you feel if this bill applied to your life? Thank you.
The opposing caucus may not represent the opposing arguments. Representative Camp, Representative Bowser, Representative
Avila, Representative Laura. Representative Andy Young.
I come to the floor in opposition against SB named wrongful imprisonment compensation. Despite its clear implication the name of the bill creates, the bill does not come even close to compensating for all types of exoneration cases. As stated in the bill, DNA or equally substantial scientific or physical evidence is required for the plaintiffs to become eligible for compensation. However, there are many cases of exoneration where DNA or other scientific evidence is not used as a determining factor. Such cases might be if the victim has lied about the plaintiff's crimes, or if the plaintiff were to plead guilty in order to have a reduced sentence. According to the National Registry of Exonerations, in 2014 and 2015, up to 11 exonerations in Michigan, only 2 of DNA evidence, while the other 9 inadequate legal defense and false accusations was the main factor of exoneration. Such false accusations and faults with the legal system do not meet the bill's requirement for DNA or convincing scientific or physical evidence. And although I agree with the basic idea that wrongfully imprisoned people should be compensated, this bill is insufficient in how many of these exonerated people are not compensated for. The fact that so many wrongfully imprisoned are not done justice to this bill, and how few people the bill would actually compensate, I implore you, all representatives, to vote no on SB number 98 as to not create such a dangerous precedent of negligence. Thank you.
Representative Bowser, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I oppose Senate Bill 98. The reason I am opposing this bill is because it does not take into consideration when the client was being advised by his lawyer to plead no consent. The defendant is not admitting to being guilty, but is being treated as guilty. When the defendant has been advised to plead guilty for a lesser charge, the defendant is usually offered this to avoid long court cases and make the case go way faster. In both of these cases, an innocent man is convicted to make a plea deal in order to avoid harsher sentences. Another issue with the bill is that the bill does not adequately compensate for the family member or direct heirs when the person dies before being proven innocent. The bill totally neglects the suffering of the family members of an inmate. This is why I oppose this bill, is because it does not take into consideration the guilty or plaintiff's family members. Based on this evidence, I urge you to vote no on Bill 98. Thank you.
Representative Laura, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am Representative Laura, and I oppose Senate Bill 98. This bill is far too ambiguous to be signed into law. It states that the maximum amount of compensation awarded to the plaintiff is $60,000 per year. But how many years does this go up to? What is the limit? I can't imagine how much money this might cost. Or what happens if the plaintiff spends under a year in prison? This bill does not state how much compensation that they would receive. Also, is a portion of the compensation liable to be deducted by taxes and child support? This bill doesn't answer that either. Finally, how does the state intend to budget the funds that will be used for compensation? And what will happen if the time comes when the state does not have enough money set aside? This bill fails to provide a specific answer to this important question. These points that I have brought up are crucial to this bill, yet the bill has no reliable answers for any of them. Based on all this persuasive testimony and evidence, I urge you, my esteemed colleagues, to defeat this unworthy piece of legislation. My fellow representatives, I urge you to vote no on Senate Bill 98. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The sponsors may now represent rebuttal arguments. Representative Nunez and Representative Ferguson. Representative Nunez, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Wrongful Imprisonment Compensation Act, also known as SB 92. 400,000 people are imprisoned a year. 1 out of 20 of those are wrongfully imprisoned. That is 20K wrongfully imprisoned a year. That is not just. This bill has no additional taxes that will be raised in this bill. This bill will also clear the plaintiff's name from criminal records. This bill also states up to $60,000. This means in case the victim was in jail less than a year. I hope that you listen to these valid arguments and make the right decision and choose yes for Bill 90.
Representative Ferguson, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So first, I will add to Representative Nunez's argument about $60,000. Up to $60,000 per year is purely meant as a way to help the plaintiff get back on their feet after being released from prison. In addition, Representative Finn said that the bill does not provide for lying, for people put in jail by lying on the stand, saying that is not physical evidence. So, physical evidence is typically a key point. Physical evidence such as documents, written documents, text messages, footage, video footage, is a key point in proving that a witness lied on the stand. And then thank you, and I urge everyone here to vote yes on House Bill Senate Bill 98. Thank you.
Representative Alvin, could you present your speech?
Senate Bill 98 has many flaws to it. Number one is the fact that people who receive compensation for a wrongful imprisonment cannot receive any other forms of payment from a source outside of this compensation. In Senate Bill 98, page 6, lines 5 to 9, it states that if a plaintiff who is awarded compensation under this section recovers damages for the wrongful conviction or imprisonment from any other person, the plaintiff shall reimburse this state for compensation paid under this section to the extent of damages recovered from the other person. This bill is also forgetting about something: the courts. Michigan and California both had 11 exonerations in 2021. California is much larger than Michigan, yet this still happens. How? There's only one answer, and that is that Michigan's courts are making incorrect decisions too often. The courts need to be charged for this, yet the bill does not approach them at all. Finally, people who are wrongfully imprisoned can get money a different way without this bill. According to fiscal analyst Daniel Crown, the city of Detroit and Clinton Township paid out $3.25 million and $3.7 million respectively for 2 people who sued the court. This is much more than this bill's compensation will give out. Based on all of this evidence, I urge my esteemed colleagues to vote no for Senate Bill 98. Thank you.
Debate is now open for supporting and opposing arguments from the other caucuses. Representative Mitchka and Representative Schindler. Representative Mitchka, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am not in support of Senate Bill 98 for a very specific reason. I am not opposed to giving wrongfully imprisoned people money for their time. However, we must do a better job of holding the courts accountable. We need to clarify which courts are making these incorrect judgments. These courts are getting away with wrongfully imprisoning innocent people. This bill does not hold them accountable, and that is why you should remember to vote no for Senate Bill 98. Thank you.
Representative Schindler, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My fellow representatives, when being wrongly convicted, not only are you in jail until you are proven not guilty, but when you get out of jail, your life is still not put together. You have lost your job, you've lost time. This bill, Senate Bill 98, would to some small extent fix these 2 problems by compensating for a small extent the time that you lost and providing you with a way to restart your life. These 2 reasons are why I am in support of Senate Bill 98. Thank you for your time.
Madam Speaker, I move the previous question.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The bill is now on third reading. All those in favor of passing the bill, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. All those opposed to the bill, please stand.